Welcome back to Access Houston on 97.9 The Box.
Good Sunday morning. You're listening to Access Houston. I'm your host, KG Smooth. Bringing back the political roundtable. We're going to extend it, so it's we're going to do a lot of talking today. In the studio, we've got a roundtable for you. Let's start off with you, Sam Blair, on the air.
Hey, it's me. I'm back again, and I can't wait to see what you guys are ready to talk about today, because we got a lot to talk about.
Darrell?
Darrell Douglas, Executive Director of HoustonJustice.org.
I am Queen Leola Mariah, found on Facebook and Instagram, and of course I am happy to be here with all my nakedness with KG Smooth.
Great Sunday morning. This is Pastor Joshua Scott of Humble Praise Center.
My name is Chase Bradstreet. I'm the Communications Director for the Houston Young Republicans, and I'm also one of your former presidents of these United States of America.
Hey, that's really good. Well, welcome, you guys. Let's get right into it because there's so much that is going on. Let's start with this opioid crisis. Drugs is a huge thing in this country, and let's be honest, the biggest drug dealers are the pharmaceutical companies. And so now that people are dependent on these said prescription drugs, now it has I believe Trump called it a national emergency. I believe it's not an epidemic, but it's just I think that's what he said. And so we're bringing awareness to that. Versus when it was done with black people and it was crack cocaine, they said they just did something else. But now that it's affecting everybody else.
Big Pharma is
now we got to do something about it. What about Big Pharma?
Big Pharma, we do have to do something about it. I'm so sorry. We have to do something about it because it is kind of getting to where, I stubbed my toe. Here's some Oxycontin. And I do think there's a fine line of addiction. And you have to kind of say to yourself, I'm not going to get addicted. But then what are you going to do when the doctors are just shilling out these medications? And it's kind of getting cheaper when you go to different drug places. Like Walmart is my spot, my Big Pharma spot. And my stuff is so cheap. I'm like, please give me more pills, not the pain ones. But I do think it is really sad how easy it's getting.
Mm-hmm. And another, if we were to acknowledge the elephant, if we were to acknowledge the elephant, look, arm around me. If we were to acknowledge the elephant in the room, back in the 80s when Reagan first came out with this war on drugs, and even in the 90s when Clinton had his extension of it, it was treated not as the medical sort of like, let's have pity on these people that it is today. It wasn't treated as an emergency. It was slap the cuffs on them, throw them in jail. And I just find it blatantly, ironic that, now all of a sudden that the people who have opioid addiction don't look like the people who have the drug charges on marijuana. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've said this before, I'll say it again, and people always like gas when they say it. Literally, as a former crack baby, I am offended because I just feel like things could have been a lot different had, they actually treated this whole situation with crack the way they're treating this opioid addiction. They're actually getting ready to throw federal money at this, and they're calling it a sickness, and they're talking about all these plans and what they want to do, and you see these pictures, and they're like, this poor lady passed out, but there was nobody there when my crack mama was passed out in a halfway house. No one.
Exactly.
I got picked up off the streets like a puppy. That's not how that goes. So there's this literal, I get angry. I get very emotional about this situation.
And as a black man who also did a 5-year stint in prison, working at the prison, I worked at the prison, I wasn't in prison. It was a trip to go to work every day and look down halls where I saw people who looked just like me. And it was odd because on my first day, I was like, did they send me to the people of color unit? Did they send me to the black unit? So there are probably people that are listening right now, or people who have family members right now who are listening, who have a cousin, a son, an uncle, an aunt who's in jail for a marijuana charge or for a little crack rock, and they're not going to get the same justice or the same attention that now the opioid addiction is going to.
I still think it's crazy that that marijuana is legal in certain states, but we still got people locked up for it. How can you be locked up for something that's legal in places?
The one thing I would say, the positive I would take from it is that now there are more programs where people can get help. Where, as you said, no one was there when my mom was passed out. Now we have programs that can help people to get rehab or
But the
some,
money
or
that
something.
Trump said that is going toward this national emergency, it really isn't a lot of money. Like it's like a drop in the pail.
And will there be equal access to those available funds? Will people in River Oaks have the same access to those resources as people in Northeast Houston? So we're gonna have to just see how the money is distributed, just to know, okay, who's gonna actually get help from those federal funds.
I don't think that they really. I think they're doing it because it's in your face, but I don't think they want to do it because Big Pharma is the one that's feeding their pockets. They lobby more than the NRA. And so, you're really messing with,
But I do
to use the
think-
expression, the church's money when, you go after. But I think people need to, just like how we went after big tobacco some decades ago, I think it's time to start going after Big Pharma.
I mean,
But where do we draw the line of personal responsibility? At what point do you take personal responsibility? And I know opioid, that one is like extra hard to get help, but at some point you have to go, okay, it's going from me taking 10, 20, 30 pills or so a day, and then I sit.
Day.
Because there are some, like, people are going crazy. And then, like, look at Prince. He had this whole thing mapped out, like, oh, I'm going to go to this Walgreens instead of this Walgreens. And so that's how people are doing this opioid
but the
addiction
main
goes.
one, I see what you're saying with the Prince one, but I think the reason why they're pushing it now is because it's heroin.
Yeah.
It's heroin. And it's happening in, suburban white America in that small town in Ohio.
But people
And
are
people are-
dying. But people are dying.
Exactly.
People are dying.
No,
No, I'm saying, so why? I just think this is a time to be happy that we're going to have all of these different avenues that people can get help, and give them the education. If they're in jail and it's because of narcotics, give them that education. That Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, all of those things, that's in the jails, and it's just giving people that knowledge and that avenue.
Okay.
I get that.
And it starts at an early age. I remember when we were kids, we had DARE. And the DARE officer would come
Yeah.
to the school and tell you about drugs and not to get addicted to drugs.
Right.
But we don't have those programs anymore. So we have to begin to instill those programs back in school so kids can know at an early age, no, I don't want to get addicted to drugs. I don't want to get addicted to pain pills. But somebody has to make the investment in the children.
Well, DARE was pretty useless. DARE, it taught so much misinformation about all of it. I've had addicts in my family. I've been the lawyer for many addicts in the criminal justice system, and DARE wouldn't have helped those people. Most of them started doing drugs because their family and their friends did drugs. And, we kind of have this myth about addiction of, oh, this person is just addicted to this one thing, when that's not the case.
No, an addictive personality is an addictive personality.
Yeah, they're gonna shove whatever they can get into them. A lot of them take the opioids because they're busy on heavy, hardcore stimulants for the rest of the day, and they want to be able to finally go to sleep. And that's actually what winds up causing a lot of overdose deaths, is because your heart can't deal with the conflicting messages that you get when you're partying hardcore 70s style like that. A lot of the problems in this area go back a long time. The original drug war wasn't Reagan. It started in 1934, I think it was. At the end of Prohibition is when they said, well, booze is fine now, but we don't like all these black people in the city doing smoking their marijuana cigarettes and doing so that's
so we got to go after the blacks and the hippies.
That's when the other things were put onto the just newly created at the time controlled substance list. And like FDR's approach to every facet of what used to be an economy, he let the large market participants in it draw up the rules under which they would be regulated. And our entire regulatory system is made like that. The large market participants get to make the rules. It's cartelized, and it's the way that FDR set it up. So we sit here and talk about the prescription the pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical companies, and they are a bad actor in the system. But they're also just doing what the godfather, the grandfather of progressive movement allowed them to do, and set up the system where they would be perpetuated in doing it.
Okay. Yeah.
I will say a lot of times what I've seen with addiction, it's always something else that they have an issue with. And I kind of want to go back to the Reagan era when they kind of changed things with the war on drugs. And like these people were just in the crazy house, were just like put out on the streets. And these were mentally ill people. And so I do think a lot of times when people get addicted to opioids or different things, you have to address the problem that they have. And it's all about education. Like you can't stop a doctor from prescribing them medicine, but there's so many safeguards to stop people from overdosing. And a lot of things
when that particular doctor's office is getting those big checks from that rep that comes to see them every week and say this, it's going to keep, money. It's all about money. Let's move on to this terrorist attack that happened in New York City the other day.
Heartbreaking.
Central Park. It seems as though this guy who had moved here was radicalized here. And
he was young.
It's I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's just way too much. I mean, we had a terrorist attack the previous month in Las Vegas.
In Vegas, but that wasn't a terrorist. Because he wasn't brown.
Well,
and you have to be brown in order to be a terrorist. You have to be Muslim to be a terrorist in Trump's America. And, it's very true. It's astonishingly true. But
no, Chase, I'm really interested because when it came to Vegas, it was I don't know all the facts. I can't speak on it yet. But then over here,
for a mass murder to be terrorism, it has to be done for a social or political purpose. So it's probably likely that he had a social or political purpose. It's just as likely that he was. I mean, if your general purpose is just misanthropy, I hate the world and I want these people to die, that's not terrorism.
So can we go to Charleston, where that was a social target, and that wasn't terrorism, according to Trump?
It took him 2 days to reply.
Dylan Roof, the shooter? Of course that was terrorism.
But that's what I'm saying. In Trump's America, the president didn't call that terrorism because the person who did it was not brown and they were not Muslim. And what it appears to be is that if it falls in line with this sort of, I think they call it alt-right, that's what they're calling it now these days. If it falls in line with that, then we can call it terrorism as long as it's not they're not Christian and they're not white. If they're brown, right, and they're Muslim, it's terrorist, right? If they're black, right, they're thug or whatever else they use. So it's kind of like our judgment in these different instances is color coded. That's what it appears to be.
I don't think you're giving your fellow Americans enough credit. I mean, you're just not.
Well, can I jump in here?
Wow.
I feel that we all in this room have said that every single instance that there's been a mass shooting, something that's happened, that it is domestic terrorism or whatever.
Well, in this case, he used the vehicle, so
it's terrorism,
tactics.
and he did use ISIS tactics, and now more and more is coming out of it. But I think as Americans, we look at it and we're describing it as on our own. I saw that Las Vegas shooting. I said, that's a terrorist. I don't care what his thing was. He went to a concert and he killed a whole bunch of people for no good reason. That's a terrorist. And like what you said, you're not giving Americans enough credit. That I would say that's not true because as an American, I said that's terrorism. It may not be terrorism in the eyes of whatever political line that you want to fall under, but it was terrorism to me. And as to go on, like, it was heartbreaking to see that. And every single time something like this happens, I always go, please don't let this be someone from the Middle East, because it hurts that everything about them and about those people who come from that whole area. So I'm always like, crap. I almost wish it wasn't, but then it's like
we've created this narrative
we have
since 9/11 as if they're the only ones that harm us, when
Everyone
I
is
think in
harming
Chase's
everyone
defense,
all the time.
You were giving us the very textbook version of what terrorism is. That is what it says as a definition. However, to look at it from the perspective of somebody, it's essentially, when you get down to the meat of it, it's to instill terror or to try to instill fear, whether the means be social and political. When we go back to it, a lot of the whatever you say, whatever they said they did it for, tends to be some type of social reason. Whether it was with Dylan Roof, he said, I feel that black people are X, Y, and Z. That was a very social, political kind of thing, because the idea was that they're getting too many rights and I'm not comfortable with that. So politically, how can you change it? And socially, how can you change it? And then I think when you go back to what you were saying about giving America credit, it's very hard, and I think I've used this before. And say, for example, if I came to your house and I bashed things up and I killed your kids, and then, for years after that, I just continued to disenfranchise people. That's what it's like to be black in America a lot of times, because it's, how can you trust, how are you supposed to trust a place that had Jim Crow laws, that had slavery, that continues to disenfranchise, that continues to make life difficult, where there's police brutality? How can you say, okay, I'm going to give this place a little credit, I'm going to give this place a little space and hope that these things change? And you've seen generations after generations that are still affected by these things for so many years.
I would disagree with a lot, because to generalize and say all black people, I would disagree. I do think that we all come from different walks of life, and not everyone has that same narrative, and that's just what I'm going to put out there.
But I think your narrative probably depends on your experience.
That's why I said everything is experience-based. Everything is experience-based. So you can come at it from that angle of, I've seen this from generation to generation, whereas there are others who have not seen all this happen, and they don't understand what Black Lives Matter means. They don't understand police brutality because they've never seen it.
But they aren't exempt.
I'm not saying they're exempt. I'm just saying what they don't know is what they don't know. So I wouldn't generalize the whole thing.
And sometimes people don't know because they don't want to know.
Right.
They choose to turn a blind eye. But the Black Lives Matter movement is very important, because in so many different instances, we find people are being disenfranchised. We find people are being mistreated on so many different levels. But if everybody say, well, that's not me, or that's not going to happen in my neighborhood, or I don't want to fight for that social issue. But when it happens to you, then you want the whole world to stop. You want everything to come to an end. But you've already isolated those individuals or those situations, like, that's not me, so who's going to come to your rescue? So it's important for all of us to just identify empathy. We need to have empathy for each other and understand, you know what, that could have been my 12-year-old son. That could have been my grandmother or my grandfather addicted to opioids. And if we can learn how to have compassion for one another, I think things would just kind of go a little smoother.
Compassion wouldn't stop. Compassion and empathy is not something that's based in race. And you need to have compassion and empathy for all people. It's not just, and really the Black Lives Matter movement to me is like the Black Lives Men Matter movement, because no one talks about what happens to black women.
Well, it was started by black women.
But what happens to black women often is that we're ignored. A lot of times our feminism is ignored. People fight for all these other things, but you remember all of these guys who get shot, but people barely remember that there been plenty of women that have been. Sandra Bland was one, but there's another little girl who the car flipped over. Like, so many different things have happened. So it's, to me, whenever we all get up in arms when it's a black man.
No,
I'm just going to put that out
when
there.
I say compassion, when I say empathy, what I mean is, as a police officer, when I pull over a African-American male, can I see this as my son? Can I see this as somebody that is related to me? And that's the type of empathy or compassion that I'm saying in dealing with, from being in the courtroom to being on a football field. We just have to all see ourselves in those situations and say, you know what, I can understand that person's point of view, so I don't have to judge them harshly or be upset about their opinions.
And in a perfect world, that would be great. But unfortunately, those that are going in there, they're only taught that people of color are a threat. And so when you're subconsciously taught that this certain group is a threat, and then you send them into a neighborhood or into a space where they see nothing but threats, and they've had no interaction with those individuals and don't understand, how to get down in the culture, because we are the nicest people you ever want to come across. Then you have an issue. Let's move on to Russia. I've been on Russia, Trump and Russia. I don't care what anybody says. I've been saying this from the beginning. Ever since that man last July invited them to hack Hillary's server.
It's fake news,
to
KG.
find
It's
those
fake news.
emails. when he said, since that moment, I've been on there on the Russia, and now we see that Bob Mueller is. Some people are starting to sing.
The House of Cards is slowly falling apart. I mean, you go from a year ago when this election first happened to now. When in history, in modern history, can you say that the chair of the president that's only been in office, like less than a year, the chair of his campaign was just indicted after a no-knock, raid, and then one of his associates. But then it's like, oh, like none of that really had to do specifically with the campaign. And then you have one of his financial advisors who we find out not only were they indicted, but they pleaded guilty to lying about this Russian thing. And I think people, listen, at the end of the day, if you can't see the writing on the wall, you don't want to see it. Exactly. Now, we can pick our partisan lines, and you can ride your party line and say, you're a diehard Republican and you will support the Republican president. If you say that, you are part of the problem.
Indeed.
We are so close together, I could kiss you. I'm going to go ahead and say that. But also, fake news. I'm going to say it forever. Everyone will say it's, sorry, Russia is a non-issue, will forever be a non-issue, because until they're actually bombing us, it's a nothing burger, as my great Texan said. It is a nothing burger, and everyone's making it into something. Really, the thing about the uranium deal with Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, that's something to look into.
But she didn't have anything to do with
it.
She was
I'm just saying, but that goes back. I'm so sorry.
On that meeting, she didn't have a word. She didn't have a
maybe
say.
she didn't recall. She didn't recall maybe because of her. What did she have, a concussion? So maybe she doesn't recall that she actually
wrote. This is what
wrote.
Guilty people do. They accuse people of doing things that they think they are, that they're doing. Think about it. When you're in a relationship and your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend constantly accusing you with it, that's because they think that you're doing what they're doing.
But
and
everyone's doing the same.
Donald Trump.
Everyone's doing the same thing.
Sure, it's dirty on both sides. We just found out that Donna Brazile came out with a book who said that Hillary Clinton wanted to control the DNC and have day-to-day action,
and there are all these
that's
people
why Bernie got pushed out.
It's
dirty
wrong.
on both sides. It's politics. Politics is the dirtiest game there is. It's more dirtier than the dope game. So you can't put anything past me, because Shonda Rhimes, if you are out there listening on the internet, you have really messed up my mind with scandal, because in my mind, everything that is going on right now, I get scandal episodes damn, they're probably doing this because this was threatening this, and then B613 is all of that, to me is real. Yes, Chase, I'm sorry.
Yes, Daddy Pope, come say
Если вы хотите сказать об России,
American, please.
Вы должны понимать Россию и
we are in America, Texas at that. The Astros just won.
Культура и политология. And I mean, so Russia has the world's longest continually operating intelligence service, and they do the exact same thing every election cycle, and that is try to have a they call it a penetration operation. On every major on every major campaign, and they get. I mean, it works on every major campaign. They bribe people, they blackmail people,
they kill people,
and they don't do that because they want one candidate or another. They do that in order to discredit whoever the actual president winds up being. They don't care if it's Hillary and they don't care if it's Trump. They just want the connection to these cutout Russian lawyers to cause such of a mess that whoever's in charge has less political capital, and they've done it every election since 19.
But
Well, let me tell you how they did what they did to
the
us.
difference then and now is they actually won. They
did.
succeeded.
Well,
They succeeded.
And if we go back to what got Nixon, it wasn't what actually happened. It was that he lied, and it was the cover up, obstruction of justice. And I don't know if y'all, when you were growing up and you did something wrong, what you did really wasn't that bad. You taking the cookie wasn't the thing. It's that you lied, and that is why President Trump is no longer, even credible, because once you lie once, now you got to make up a lie to cover up that lie because you forgot parts of it. And now the whole story is slowly unraveling around him. And that is the problem. It's not, I don't think the Trump campaign had the infrastructure, the know-how, or even the people in order to come up with something as sophisticated as colluding with the Russians. Okay, so let's put that to the side. Did they do some illegal stuff, reaching out, doing some Hail Marys? Absolutely, that's illegal within itself. But aside from that, the fact that everybody's lying, and to see the president on the news in these news clips, it's almost like an episode of like Mad TV or SNL, but it's really him saying like, it's not me, it's Hillary. I mean, come on.
First of all,
it's crazy.
I've always been on record within Republican circles as saying that we elected a shyster and a con man.
Yeah.
Who's incapable of telling the truth.
I call him Kardashian president.
Let's not pretend that all the things that they accused him of colluding of in order to get, they're like, he paid these Russian lawyers for information on Hillary. He blah 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 blah. The shady dossier that BuzzFeed came out with just now got proven to have been purchased from a Russian cutout using the Clinton campaign. So like I said, it's a sophisticated Russian intelligence operation, and they do that knowing that these people are of low moral character, and knowing that our political class,
and that America is just stupid. I mean,
no,
let's just be honest.
We'll buy up any of it.
She's dumb.
Okay,
this was the same. You just told us to give Americans more credit, but now we're talking about these low moral standards that Americans.
Here's the thing:
our political class has low.
America I'm saying America as an empire. The only way that America can ever come down is within itself. And Russia, I think what they've done, if you want to give them any credit, is they've divided America very much so. And
that's a lot of credit to be given, because not only did they didn't
they had a hand in it by purchasing
into the minds and the psyches of the American people. I mean,
but they did it
we didn't
so
think that they
easy.
Actually hacked into the voting machine.
Facebook ads, Twitter ads,
right,
Instagram ads.
And so I remember over the summer, like when it was all starting to bubble around, maybe like last August, September-ish, and we're hearing more about it, and some of the young kids up here, and I was telling them, I was like, yo, all those ads that you see on Facebook, Hillary has a hitting a child sex shop at a pizza shop somewhere, like all of those things. Denzel Washington endorses Donald Trump, like all of those stories that you saw on Facebook, that was Russia. And they were like, what?
But they used,
and now we're finding out that they did even more, so much more. That's why I said when all of this was coming out in the beginning, I said they have done things that we don't even know what the implications are going to be later on down the line. Like that's how sophisticated it was.
But it's caused a division, exactly what they want. You've had this division in this country now, left and right,
from a number one foreign adversary. So
which
why
they used
isn't
an American
everybody
company,
upset?
but they did all of this through American companies. So why are we not holding those people accountable? Why did you let these people spread fake news? Why did you just let whoever they wanted to buy these fake ads? Like, you had to go through Facebook and go, which is not fake, which is fake, and then tell Facebook, this is fake. So
well, then Facebook and the rest of them didn't do their job by hesitating, by not telling
And
us.
can we put some of the responsibility to you, those of y'all that are listening? Because I don't know, and this probably happened to a lot of y'all too. You're on Facebook and you see somebody that you actually respect sharing something that's not like from a reputable news source, a credible
Right.
source.
Right.
Like I had aunties and stuff, and I'm like inboxing them, like putting shame on our family name. You know, don't
Darrell,
share.
let me tell you
Don't,
something. It's for years. Like when my mother or my aunt like call me about something, the first thing I ask, "Do you see that on Facebook?"
Right.
I saw it on Facebook. No,
And it
it's
doesn't.
not-
I mean, just
I
look
always
down.
have to ask that.
Look down in that bottom left corner. Does it say www.newyorktimes or does it say www. Bob's blog
Online
or whatever?
blog. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
There were a lot of opinion pieces flying around during our last election, and it was sickening because you really couldn't quite get through all
You
of
couldn't
that because the
escape it.
masses, once they get infiltrated, people start to believe whatever they want to believe, and that just spreads like wildfire.
or they believe nothing, which even it's like I don't know what I get online to see. I don't know what I'm going to believe, so I'm just not going to watch it. Like there's a good friend of mine who's politically whatever, and he posted something about America or Texas in 2019. The governor is going to be president. You're going to have no health care. All of this thing, even though it's political satire, there are a lot of people out there who are going to read that post and go, "Oh my God, did you hear we're going to war with Mexico?"
Oh my
Which
God.
I
Which is-
had.
Y'all
Which
stop
was
reading
evident
that.
in the polls
So-
because think about how many people didn't go vote because they was infiltrated with too much bad information. Well, I can't trust Hillary. I can't trust Trump. So
And
I'm
then
just not going to
that's
vote.
when you said it's the responsibility
We're
of
gonna go to war with
ourselves.
someone. Mexico's right next
Probably
door.
North
so-
Korea, because that's a thing right now. We're definitely still having that fight. Anybody got any info on that?
I don't know. America has turned into an episode of South Park, so I'm just waiting to see what the bottom line is.
Well, the bottom line is this tax bill doesn't look like it's going to happen, or is
or the
it?
tax bill for rich people, or like what?
Oh, I mean, this is the have and have nots. Like it's
Oh,
not,
right, the one
you
that
know,
like helps
so-
boost the middle class and
The
continues
tax
to
bill
have
that's
this
called
progressive-
cut taxes. That's what he's labeling.
All I know is if my health insurance can stop going up, or at least add some plastic surgery to it, that's all I want. Like if we're gonna pay, if I'm gonna be paying so much money, I want to be able to get a Khloe Kardashian behind.
Well,
Lipo
you can-
could be nice,
So-
but that's not what.
But that's just I'm
you
gonna
know,
put
but
that
when
out
people
there.
Can't
So
even, like get maternity
One of those
care.
gluten-
I mean,
Take
I was
machines.
one of them. I was one of the people who couldn't get maternity care.
And I'm sorry.
And I had
for that.
to pay out of pocket for that for both of my pregnancies, and which made me mad because I was like, what the hell am I? Excuse me, why am I paying so much money? And it went up within a year and a half from me paying $300 and something to almost $900 a month. And I was like, cannot afford this without help. And there's no way I'm going to get something from the government, because once you get something from the government, you're kind of beholden to those people. I don't like anyone telling me what to do. So I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to cut off the insurance and just take the L when I pay
So
my
you get
taxes.
the tax penalty.
You get a tax penalty up to $700.
Oh yeah.
And
It's a
so
heavy
a
tax
lot
bill.
of single people.
No, I'm saying she takes the tax penalty.
Well,
instead
yeah.
of-
Thankfully, I didn't. But I do think a lot of people. I looked at it as, what if you didn't have someone to help you? What if you couldn't go and say, "Mom, I need help"? Then you're a single mom with 2 kids and paying daycare, paying all this. Plus, you have to pay for taxes. If you you can't do your taxes by yourself, and then on top of that, you got to pay a tax penalty. There's no way. There was no way. So a lot of people are saying, F it, I won't get insurance because that's better than how much I'm going to have to pay for insurance. My personal opinion.
To go back to what you were saying about the tax bill, first of all, it's not going to pass because this dysfunctional White House and Congress can't pass gas. Okay. So at the end of the day, it's not going to pass. Not only is it not going to pass, it shouldn't pass because an across the board tax cut, when you see what's happening to our schools, when in urban areas, there's constantly the discussion about which high school and which couple of middle schools are we going to close every year. There's something structurally wrong with the way that we are funding public public services. Now, I'm single, right? I got a pretty good job. You know, I'm not balling, but fish don't fry in the kitchen and the beans don't burn on the grill. And I don't mind paying taxes, right? Because that's my responsibility, right? We were talking about compassion earlier. What billionaire needs a tax cut? Right? When you have people that got $20 in their pocket right now that they have to hold on and make stretch till they get paid in 2 weeks.
And as a business owner, I tell people all the time that it's for me personally, I should probably vote Republican. But I don't vote Republican because everybody that I know, everybody that I'm related to, they're on that other side of the fence. So they can't necessarily afford taxes being cut.
Well,
so
black
it's
people were
important.
Republicans in the beginning,
Right.
And it's
because
just important.
at the basic fundamental values, that's us.
And most
Right.
black people are conservatives. If you take
Right.
the fiscal part away from it, black people would technically be Republicans.
Republicans, for real.
Very
But it's
socialist.
just important for people to again go back to that word compassion. Do I need as a billionaire? Do you need a tax break? Do you need a tax cut? No, you don't need it because you're just gonna make more money. You're gonna be billions on top of
And
billions.
didn't we try it this way before? I mean, haven't we done this before and we see where it got us in '08? Like, we've tried it this way. Why are we going back to the same way
It made a
that
lot of
got
people
us
rich.
in
It
the
made a lot of
worst
people
financial crisis since the Great Depression? Like, why
But
are we
it
going
made
back?
it made it
That's-
worse because a lot of people, for one, a lot of companies left the United States. Like, let's remember, a lot of people decided, okay, it's cheaper to go someplace else and then pay this little measly tax over here because they're taking so much out. These are like, I'm talking about billionaire,
I mean, that was part of it, but I think
like
those,
corporations.
I think
I'm
those
talking
subprime
about
mortgage loans.
and
had
then
more to do
I mean,
with it than
a lot of
that.
that. But once again, I feel like we're taking away personal responsibility. You should not have gone for that loan. Yes, it was there.
But if these banks know that these people can't afford for that, then why were they being predators and
Because
giving
the
these
Department
people?
of Justice went and told them that if they did not make a certain number of loans to people who otherwise would not have had an acceptable credit score, that they would have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to the federal government as part of a fine.
But I worked at a bank during this time, and I refused to offer people loans. I refused on the basis that the country's economy is crumbling, and y'all want me to offer people loans to bundle up their loans so that they won't get poor. Like, no, that doesn't make sense. You're just going to have a higher interest rate, and then now someone's going to take your house from under you. So I just refuse not to do it. And that just, once again, that comes with personal responsibility. We're keep on wanting to blame all of these other people, but sit right down and look at yourself and say, what did I do to make this situation better or worse? And then again, when we're talking about billionaires and millionaires taking tax breaks, okay, they take so much money from these people, then they have to some regular.
As if they don't make so much.
They
money?
would.
What's
they
wrong
would.
with paying
There's
your
like
fair share?
there is not a fair share. There's
There's not a fair share.
If you say take over 50% of my paycheck and I have to continue to work, I have to continue to find a job that's at least $1 million to pay for everything that I have and all of the employees that I have, and on top of that, offer them insurance. Like, at the end, you're really sitting there like scraping pennies.
I guess business isn't booming then.
Let's consider what really happened in 2008. The housing bubble was Goldman Sachs offering these, loans that were not good, and they knew they were not good months ahead of time. So if you told somebody this is an A+ loan, you're going to be fine, and you know that in 3 months that's going to be an F loan, that's an issue. Goldman Sachs knew, on top of that, their biggest financial advisor there decided to walk out with a golden parachute and go work for the Bush administration. So he went from making however many millions a year to making $400,000 a year, and everybody said, "Oh, well, that's such a meager salary. He's such a great guy." But let's not forget that half of $400,000 is still $200,000. You still have neighborhoods where people make way less than below the minimum wage, or just make the minimum wage, and you can't live off of that. But even more than that, it's just the fact that they knew all of these things,
right, and
they still offered these loans to these people, knowing that these are people who were going to lose their retirement, their entire savings. So many people went down in that housing bubble, and Goldman Sachs got a bailout. The automotive industry got a bailout. So all of these places are okay, but you still have these oodles and noodles of people who didn't have anywhere to go at the end of the day. And so I think what they're trying to say is, yes, there is a fair share, because again, if you're making $1 million and you're giving 50% of that, which is $500,000, I'm not trying to read anybody's pocketbook, but you're a lot more well off than somebody making $725 at McDonald's that bought a house and got a loan
And have
is
to
not
send your
homeless.
16-year-old to go work so you guys can have enough money to just pay the rent every month.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't have bought
Oh,
the house.
it's real.
So
The-
you shouldn't have a roof.
The
over
top
your head?
15%
I
of
mean,
taxpayers already do pay 85% of all taxes.
Do
So
we have
like,
stats on that.
actually, it's probably worse.
Well,
than
no,
that.
I mean,
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the top 15% pays 85% of all taxes. You'd have to really put that down in data for me.
Okay,
Like,
so
I
it
have
wasn't
to-
die down. Let's just move on here. We got an upcoming election on Tuesday. There are no people on. I mean, there are no
What's up?
personalities on the ballot.
You do.
I'm sorry.
there
It
are
is the
people on the
top
ballot.
20% of earners pay 84% of income taxes.
There you go. But I mean, if you look at when you look at corporate taxes, when you look at businesses that are not paying their taxes, when you look at the fact that our current president hasn't released his tax returns, there's a reason behind all of that, right? So
But one
you could
doesn't
say,
have to. There's no law saying that you have to release your taxes.
well, but there's a reason why he
There's
wouldn't.
tradition.
Yeah, but there's a reason.
Yeah.
There's a
Should we
reason.
trust?
There's a-
Should we trust the
We
man
should
that
trust him. He's
can't
an
release his
honest
taxes?
man.
I don't like. I really, at the end of the day, like what he pays in taxes. Is that gonna affect me?
Yes.
How is it gonna affect me?
Because-
how is it gonna affect
Because
me?
if he's not paying taxes and he's the president that gets to sign off on the bills, he gets to then set those same rules for his friends who probably aren't paying taxes either. And then when it's time for your children or your nieces, nephews, whoever to go to school, and they're going to school without books or going, you look at the state of our schools today, not only in Houston, but across the nation. You look at school districts like HISD and Dallas ISD. By the way, Houston ISD has an election. 6 of the 9 school board seats are up this election. So,
Should we not re-vote for those people?
I mean, you have to vote in those elections. What I'm saying, like it rolls down. It rolls down because when people don't pay their taxes, there's not enough money in the state coffers. That rolls down, and the next thing you know, they're talking about potentially closing Worthing and Cashmere and Wheatley, and that's like for real. That is a serious consideration right now.
Houston, the city of Houston, has a $5.2 billion budget. It could adequately fund its schools if it weren't led by an incompetent city government. $5.2 billion. And, the president, his power on taxes is essentially just the bully pulpit. The president doesn't set taxes. Congress sets taxes, right?
Yeah.
And the federal government doesn't buy school books. State governments, local governments buy school
All
books.
right, Chase.
They have
Now-
a
now
piece
you-
of it.
you-
Part of the funding for schools is federal. Part of it is
a
federal.
tiny sliver for,
No.
for
It's like it's like
the whole state.
yeah. I think but some of it is federal. But here's what you have to think about: who sets the who sets the parameters, right, for the school district? It's not the school district; they get their money from the state, right? So
Yes, school districts get their
Right.
money from the state, right?
Right.
Yes.
We also receive funds from property taxes and
Absolutely.
lottery, so these are things that we also are important to consider. But again, when you live in a neighborhood that maybe is across the train tracks from another neighborhood, you get things like what's that nice school in River Oaks? I can't remember what it's called.
Lamar?
They've got like a 99%. Is it Carnegie Vanguard?
Carnegie Vanguard.
They have a 99% pass rate for their students. But then you turn around and you see Worthing, and it's like, are the doors even open today? They've got cops, but they don't have educators. They've got security guards, but they don't have anybody or the PE teachers teaching history. That's not how that should go. And my entire family went to Worthing, so I definitely, when I heard that they were getting ready to close Worthing, I'm like, do you know how many kids live in that neighborhood? Do you know how many people depend on Worthing to get an education? When you take out Worthing, Cashmere, Wheatley, if I'm a kid in that era, I'm not going to school because then I got to figure out how to hop this bus, to hop that bus, to get here,
Right.
to get there. And at the end of the day, I still got to go to work at McDonald's to help my family make ends meet. I'm not going to school. So that continues to perpetuate this issue or this problem of these uneducated youth. And so then you get with these stereotypes that people say or whatever the case may be. But a lot of that definitely goes into how much money is coming out of. That's why taxes are such an important thing. It's like these poor neighborhoods can't come up with the money. So it would be great, since we're talking about compassion, if this neighboring area put a little bit more towards that, because Carnegie's doing great.
Over 80% of the students in HISD are qualified as economically disadvantaged. That means that they qualify for free or reduced lunch. 80%? I'm sorry, where are these other people sending their kids? Because 80% of Houston is not economically disadvantaged. So what you have is the haves don't send their kids to Worthing or, to these other schools. So they don't care when the cuts happen. They want their tax cut because they're not sending their children there anyway. And, let them eat cake.
Leona's got this face.
Let's wrap this thing up on a positive. Let's wrap this up on a
I'm not
positive
going.
note here.
Not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
The Houston Astros, world champions.
Congrats
Yes,
for the Houston.
congratulations to
H-Town.
the Astros.
I don't really care about baseball.
it was
I'm
great.
sorry.
Okay, well then you don't have to participate. Don't mess up. Okay,
Sorry.
this
You
is
can at
great.
least
I said
care
we're
about
ending this on a happy
you can at
note.
least care about the worst city
Viola and I are leaving
in the
because none of
country
us care.
losing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
hey, I
Just
was like,
screw LA,
Houston.
right?
Houston always does everything the best, and I looked at
We're
Hurricane
great.
Harvey and
Right.
Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. I was like, Harvey was worse. I'm so sorry. We killed more people. Thank you very much. Then we have the Astros and the Dodgers, and I was like, okay, come on now, LA, you already lost. It's Houston. It's Texas, baby. But I don't care about baseball, like I said.
Well, maybe you care about. We
I
lost
care
our
about-
quarterback.
Congratulations to the Correas.
He's gone. Oh
Did he
yeah,
die?
that's great.
What
Well,
No,
he tore his
His
ACL.
He did not
he's out for the
die.
season.
Oh wow.
In football life, he died.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
He
but
died.
look,
This is
but
for the
JJ
year.
Watt.
But
though,
congratulations.
He's not the quarterback.
No.
JJ Watt is out for the season.
JJ
Yeah.
Watt's
Oh my God,
hurt
you
again.
Oh,
keep your
wow.
mouth
I'm not
closed,
gonna lie.
too.
I'm kind of the same way. Like I'm like
Okay.
people ask me like, Darrell, you see the game? I'm like, what
But
sport
no.
are we playing? now?
Congratulations,
Seriously, guys, like-
definitely congratulations to the Houston Astros, because I
Yes.
think seeing everybody downtown, seeing
Yeah.
everybody go out and purchase Astros gear was
Yeah.
another way to kind of rally the city, forgetting about color, forgetting about religion, sexuality, preference, any of those things. Just everybody set those things aside today to come out and root for the home team. So I thought it was really good for the city of Houston, the Astros winning the World Series.
Come on, this is
Bad for
Houston.
traffic.
Like Leo-
Bad for
I mean,
traffic. I will
we
say.
were-
I was very
we were
upset
underwater,
about.
and now we're on top of the world. So
Always,
that's
Houston. We're always the
that's
best.
what it is. Hey, thank you all so
Congratulations
much.
to the Correas. Did you see the proposal?
Oh yeah.
Congratulations to
yeah.
them. I saw that part of the game.
Yeah.
That was
Okay.
dope. That was
Marriage
everything.
is so wonderful.
What a story. Hollywood couldn't write a story like this.
Oh, but it does.
Thank you guys so much for coming on the program. I really appreciate it. This has been an interesting time. Very colorful as well. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Access Houston.